This is a satellite view of the Korean peninsula at night. South Korea is a beacon of light, cities glowing with energy and life. And then there's North Korea. It's not just dark, it's almost invisible. I recently came across this image and I could not stop staring at it. At first glance, it might just look like a map of electricity use. But the more we look into it, it says something more. That darkness represents a nation isolated from the rest of the world. We've all heard of how challenging life is in North Korea. Imagine living in a world where everything is decided for you. Your job, your clothes, even your haircut. Where loyalty to the state is not just a value, it's the foundation of the nation, demanded above all else. But here's the thing, while life there might seem unimaginable to us, it's normal for the 26 million people who live it every day.
자아 비판과 다른 사람 비판을 하는 그런 어떤 모임을 생활청화라고 하는데요. 그게 제일 싫네요.
For decades they were told that their country is the best in the world, a socialist paradise. The regime even claims that its citizens are among the happiest people on the earth.
People in DPRK lives better.
But when I looked deeper, I realized how much of this is built on illusion. The United Nations World Happiness Report does not even rank North Korea. Not because it's the happiest nation, but because no reliable data exists.
그거 안 하는 것만으로도 행복한 것 같아요.
Meanwhile, South Korea, its neighbor, consistently ranks among the happiest and most prosperous nations in the world. So how did two Koreas, once one country, end up so radically different? If you have ever looked up information about North Korea, you'll know about all this and even more. There's plenty of this information out there. Articles, documentaries, reports. They cover the strict rules, the isolation, the propaganda, and while those things matter, they often tell us what North Korea is like, but not why. That's what drew me into this story. I wanted to understand the forces that shaped this nation. What moments in history brought it to where it is today. To me, this is not just a story about rules or politics. It's a story about how a nation's identity is built, how it survives, and what it means to live within it. And this is where the story takes a fascinating turn. Much of what North Korea is today, its rules, its isolation, its identity, can be traced back to one man, Kim Il-sung. He's not just remembered as a leader. He is worshipped as a godlike figure, a man whose presence transcends mortality, shaping North Korea's identity and belief system even decades after his death. His face is everywhere, in classrooms, on statues, even in people's homes. But how did one man gain so much power? How did he convince an entire nation to not just follow him, but to worship him? And how did he create a system so tightly controlled that it still survives today? This is a story about understanding a nation that lives in darkness, both literally and figuratively. And as we go deeper, I hope to uncover not just the truth about North Korea, but the resilience of the people who find ways to survive, to hope, and sometimes to escape. So join me as we unravel the myths, the history, and the reality of North Korea. Let's begin. To understand Kim Il-sung, the man who built North Korea and shaped its identity, we first need to step back in time to a moment of chaos and opportunity. The year is 1945. World War II has just ended and the Korean peninsula, once a colony of Japan, is now caught between two superpowers, the Soviet Union and the United States. Amid this geopolitical chessboard, a man named Kim Song-ju, known to us as Kim Il-sung, was about to rise to power. But this was not a story of self-made revolutionary. Kim Il-sung's path to leadership was paved not by his own achievements, but by the Soviet Union and its leader, Joseph Stalin.
부산 바위 위에 청년 장군 번쩍 올라서셨다.
North Korean propaganda paints Kim Il-sung as a revolutionary hero, a man born into a family of resistance fighters and destined to lead. The reality, as I've come to learn, is far less grand. Kim Il-sung was born in 1912 as Kim Song-ju in a small village near Pyongyang during the time when Korea was under Japanese colonial rule. His family fled to Manchuria in northeastern China to escape Japanese oppression. Kim joined one of the many Korean anti-Japanese guerrilla bands operating from the northeast China. Now, guerrilla warfare. What does that mean exactly? It's a form of irregular small-scale warfare where fighters rely on surprise attacks, ambushes, and sabotage rather than direct confrontation. There was some connection between these bands and the Chinese communist groups, and Kim also joined the Chinese Communist Party. Around this time, Kim Song-ju adopted the name Kim Il-sung, meaning Kim become the sun. While North Korean propaganda exaggerates his role in guerrilla warfare against the Japanese, historical records show that Kim was one of the many Korean leaders active in resistance efforts. His activities in Manchuria during the 1930s gained some prominence, drawing attention from the Japanese forces. By 1940, escalating Japanese pressure forced many guerrilla groups, including Kim's, to retreat into the Soviet Union. Once in the Soviet Union, Kim joined the Soviet Red Army. There are very few clear records of his activities during the World War, but it's evident that he played no role in the defeat of Japan. So how did Kim Il-sung go from being a guerrilla fighter to leading an entire nation? The answer lies with Joseph Stalin.
He cultivated an image that he was the father of the nation, that he was a strong leader. So for many dictators, Joseph Stalin is actually a role model.
Soviet advisors helped Kim consolidate power, guiding him in purging political rivals and establishing a one-party state. With Stalin's backing, Kim's transformation from a guerrilla fighter to the great leader of North Korea was complete. But what makes this story truly fascinating is what happened next. Kim Il-sung, who was chosen by the Soviets to serve their interests, turned that position into a platform for absolute control. Once he had consolidated his power, he began crafting a regime that was uniquely his own. He used Soviet support to build the foundations of his dictatorship, but then distanced himself from Moscow by creating the Juche ideology, North Korea's infamous doctrine of self-reliance. It's ironic, isn't it? The man who owed his leadership to foreign powers would later claim that North Korea stood independent of them all. This contradiction, this blend of dependency and defiance, is a recurring theme in Kim's rule and the one that would shape North Korea's identity for decades. But how did he build a cult of personality so powerful that it still endures today?
When I lived in North Korea, I didn't know too much about the outside countries. We never seen outside countries movie. We only watched the North Koreans movie and the Kim family's documentaries.
And you bow to them, and you regard them as God. And outside the house, you have Kim family monuments everywhere you go.
Most North Korean people cannot enjoy freedom, and they don't understand what freedom is and what human rights is.
It's a beautiful country, many 25 million people, which are wonderful people. It's just where they live in that kind of cage, large prison country.
I kept coming across stories that felt almost unbelievable. Accounts of how tightly controlled life is for an average citizen in North Korea. There is no freedom to choose what you wear, what you watch, or even how you express yourself. It's like living in a reality designed by someone else, where every step is scripted by the state. But why? Why does the regime go to such extremes to dictate these things? And what does this tell us about the system Kim Il-sung built? This isn't just about control. It's about crafting a belief system where entire nations are painted as enemies, threats to the very existence of North Korea.
America is the enemy of North Koreans. That was only education we had throughout our lives, because the Americans, we cannot enjoy our freedom in the world. So that was the propaganda.
The United States is the central villain in this story, described as the imperialist aggressors who divided Korean people and seek to destroy their nations. South Korea is painted as a puppet state, a land of misery controlled by foreign powers. And then there's Japan, vilified for its colonial rule over Korea, a historical wound that North Korean propaganda reopens often to stoke nationalism. I came across this clip where a kid is confidently speaking about his hatred for America and South Korea.
What do you like about this game?
Killing the enemy.
Hitting the enemy? Who's the enemy?
Americans. They forcibly invaded us, slaughtered our people, buried them alive and killed them.
So they teach you that the Americans are the enemy and you need to shoot them, to fight them?
Yes.
And what struck me the most was not his words. It was the realization that for him, this is not propaganda. It's the only reality that he's ever known.
People in DPRK lives better because majority of people, not majority, all people has a house for free, education for free, and healthcare for free. Ask all the beggars in the United States and Spain. They will love to come here. Every day I receive hundreds, and I say hundreds of requests to live and work in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
The government turns our blood and sweat into luxurious life for the leadership and missiles that blast our hard work into the sky. We used to think that the money spent on just one missile could feed us for 3 months. But the government doesn't care.
In North Korea, even the smallest details of daily life are dictated by the state. I came across this fascinating report by the Human Rights Watch that described how citizens are only allowed to choose from a list of state-approved hairstyles designed to reflect socialist values. Western clothing, makeup and hairstyles are banned outright. They are considered symbols of capitalist corruption. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? A pair of jeans being considered a threat to an entire nation's identity. Television and radio broadcasts are tightly controlled. Citizens are only allowed to access state-run channels that glorify the regime. I found a testimony from a defector who said that even private conversations were dangerous. Mentioning anything critical about the government could lead to imprisonment or worse. Breaking these rules does not just affect you, it affects your entire family. One of the most chilling systems I came across during my research is something called the 3 generations of punishment.
하나에는 연좌제라는 게 있습니다. 범죄를 저질렀거나 아니면 북한 정권에 대해서 범죄를 저지른 사람들에 대해서 그 당사자는 물론 그리고 가족에 대해서 추방 아니면 또 정치범 수용소로 보내지는 사례들이 있습니다. 그 국가에 대해서 반감정을 품은 사람들은 씨를 말리라는 그리고 3대를 멸하라는 김일성의 그런 말이 하나의 법으로 자리 잡고 있습니다.
This means that if one person is caught breaking the law, not only are they punished, but their children and grandchildren can also be sent to labor camps. Entire families are torn apart to serve as a warning to others. This system was first introduced during Kim Il-sung's rule as a way to enforce total loyalty to the state. I found detailed accounts from the defectors describing the brutal conditions of these labor camps. Inmates live in overcrowded barracks, forced to perform grueling labor with barely enough food to even survive. One defector recalled how their entire family was sent to a camp after a relative was caught watching a smuggled South Korean drama. At this point, I started wondering, why does this regime enforce such harsh rules? Why go to such lengths to isolate people? The answer, as I discovered, lies in the foundation of Kim Il-sung's regime. Kim built his power on the idea that North Korea was a socialist paradise, superior to the rest of the world. To maintain that belief, the regime had to keep its people in the dark, literally and figuratively. Any exposure to the outside world, whether through foreign media or interactions, could unravel the carefully constructed narrative. But here's where things get interesting. Over the past decade, something remarkable has started to happen. Despite the regime's efforts, glimpses of the outside world are finding their way into North Korea. Smuggled USB drives loaded with South Korean dramas, foreign news, and even Western films are crossing the border from China. For many North Koreans, this is their first glimpse of a world beyond their borders. One defector described watching a South Korean drama for the first time. It was a simple scene, a family sitting together, laughing, eating a meal, but for them, it was revolutionary. They'd been told their entire lives that South Korea was a wasteland of poverty and chaos. Seeing this changed everything. This smuggled media is not just entertainment, it's hope. It's a reminder that there's a different way to live. One where fear does not dictate your every move. And for a regime built on control, that hope is dangerous. What fascinates me the most is how, despite everything, people continue to live. They work, they hope, and some even dream to escape, knowing the risks they might face. And yet, with all those hopes among the people and the growing cracks in the system, the Kim family continues to rule. Decade after decade, they managed to maintain a control over the nation that lives in isolation, fear, and loyalty. It's remarkable and deeply unsettling how this family has built a system so tightly woven that it's endured through famine, international sanctions, and internal resistance. And as we end this video, I leave with one final question. What happens when the cracks in the system become too wide to ignore? What happens when the truth these people deserve, finally breaks through?
Hi, this is Leo Fernando. Thanks for watching till end.
Please like the video if you liked how I put this video together, and make sure to press the dislike button if you did not like it, and tell me in the comments why. I've tried to make this video in a way that the history does not sound so boring, and I have many other things to talk about. If this is something that interests you, you can subscribe this channel for more such videos. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.